I have verified the results. I am absolutely certain. Are you prepared for the consequences if you are wrong? She seems quite sure of herself.
At 6:42 on a rainy Thursday morning, Evelyn Carter found a clean white rectangle where a portrait had been hanging for 83 years. The wall around it was dusty. The brass hook was still warm from the gallery lights. On the floor, beneath the empty frame, someone had left a single gray glove. Evelyn picked it up, turned it over, and felt a fine grit caught in the seam. It was not gallery dust. It was restoration plaster, the kind used only in the conservation room beneath the east stairwell. Before she could call anyone, a voice behind her said, "Step away from the wall." By noon, the museum would say Evelyn had stolen the painting. By nightfall, the museum's founder would ask her to show him the evidence everyone else had ignored. The Bellwether Museum of American Memory sat on a hill above the river, a long limestone building with tall windows and a copper roof gone green at the edges. Visitors came for its portraits, but the people who kept it alive arrived before sunrise. Evelyn was one of them. She opened the service gate at 6, checked the humidity gauges, walked the marble floors in quiet circles, and listened for anything that sounded wrong. A loose vent, a leaking pipe, a frame tapping against a wall when the heating system started. She had worked there for 4 years, long enough to know which doors swelled during rain and which paintings made the public slow down without realizing it. She had no degree in art history. Her mother had taught her to notice materials while repairing old furniture in their apartment above a laundromat. Wood told the truth through its grain, her mother used to say. Metal told the truth through its weight. Even a painted surface told the truth if you gave it time. Evelyn kept a small red notebook in the pocket of her maintenance jacket. In it, she recorded broken hinges, replaced bulbs, changes in smell, and anything that did not belong. The notebook was not official. No one had asked her to keep it. That was exactly why she trusted it. The missing painting was called The Blue Hour, a portrait of a young woman painted in 1911 by the museum's founding artist, Clara Vail. It was not the most expensive work in the collection, but it was the one visitors remembered. The subject looked past the viewer with a tired, patient expression, as if she had been waiting for someone to arrive. Its dark blue dress gave the gallery a calm center. Malcolm Reed, the museum's retired curator, often said the portrait was less a picture than a promise that somebody would keep looking. Malcolm had hired Evelyn. He was 67, silver-haired, careful with his words, and famous for remembering the history of every frame in the building. He no longer ran the museum, but he still came in most mornings with a green wool coat, a paper cup of tea, and a magnifying loupe in his pocket. He had planned to speak about the Blue Hour at the museum's centennial gala that evening. Donors would gather under the skylight. Cameras would record the ceremony. Julian Vail, the current executive director and Malcolm's nephew, would announce a new private foundation in his own name. Julian arrived at 7:03, 10 minutes earlier than usual. He wore a black suit and an amber tie, and his shoes made a sharp sound on the marble. He did not look at the empty wall. He looked at Evelyn. "Who was assigned to the East Gallery?" he asked. "I was," she said. "Then you were the last person with access." He said it as if he were reading a weather report. Evelyn held the gray glove in a clear cleaning bag. "I found this under the frame." Julian took the bag, glanced at it, and handed it to a security officer. "Do not touch anything else." Within an hour, the museum's security chief had sealed the East Gallery. A police liaison stood beneath the skylight with a clipboard. The museum's insurer sent an investigator who asked Evelyn how much the portrait was worth. She said she did not know. He asked whether she had debts. She said that was not relevant. Julian asked her to wait in the staff room. The staff room smelled of burnt coffee, wet coats, and the lemon cleaner she had used before dawn. On the table, her red notebook sat beside her keys. Someone had already opened it. Tessa Nguyen found her there. Tessa worked in the archive, wore round glasses, and kept a silver pen clipped to her rust-colored cardigan. She closed the door with her shoulder and whispered, "They're saying your access card opened the conservation corridor at 5:58. Evelyn looked at the clock. It did not. The log says it did. The log is wrong. Tessa hesitated. Julian says the log is the only thing that matters. Evelyn turned the red notebook toward herself. The pages had been shifted. A line she had written at 6:18, loose brass screw in east frame, now had a gray fingerprint across it. At 10, Julian suspended Evelyn pending investigation. He did it in the gallery, in front of 2 board members and Malcolm. "This is procedural," he said. "No one is making a final judgment." Evelyn looked at the empty frame. "You already told the insurer I had access." Julian's face did not change. "You did have access." Malcolm took one step forward. "Julian, Uncle, we cannot turn this into a debate about feelings." Evelyn put the glove bag on the evidence table. "It is not a feeling. The grit in this glove is restoration plaster. The gallery floor was cleaned before I arrived. Whoever lost, it was inside the conservation room." The investigator asked whether Evelyn could prove that. She pointed to the sole of her work boot.
"You are a fraud, Evelyn. You've deceived us all."
No, I haven't. Julian, please, you must believe me.
"Lies. Look around. Everyone agrees."
"My boots are rubber. Plaster powder would collect in the grooves. There is none." She pointed to the glove. "This is wool. The powder is pressed into the seam. It was carried from a dry room into a wet hallway." The investigator wrote something down, but Julian stepped in front of the frame. "We are not going to turn a missing painting into a laboratory exercise." Evelyn heard Malcolm breathe in sharply. She had seen that reaction before. It meant he had noticed something, but had not decided whether it was safe to say. When she left the museum, rain ran down the stone steps in thin silver lines. Evelyn...
"You shouldn't be here, Evelyn. Give me the bag."
This is evidence.
"That's exactly why I need it."
did not go home. She went to the public library across the river and used a computer near the history shelves. The museum's website had already replaced the page for the Blue Hour with a message about an unfortunate incident. The photograph was gone. In its place was a paragraph about cooperation, transparency, and the protection of cultural property. Evelyn copied the wording.
It's gone. What does it say?
Someone took it.
I know.
Into her notebook. It sounded like a door closing. Noah, her 12-year-old nephew, met her at the library after school. He carried a blue sketchbook and wore a mustard hoodie. He had been drawing the museum from memory since he was 6, even though he was not allowed to wander the galleries without an adult. He listened while Evelyn described the empty frame. Then he opened the sketchbook.
Thank you very much.
Looks like we're the first to arrive, Henry.
Indeed, Charles.
On one page, he had drawn the East Gallery from the side, including the wall, the frame, and a bronze vent below it. That vent was open yesterday, he said. I saw light behind it. Evelyn studied the drawing. What kind of light? A line of yellow, like somebody had a flashlight in the wall. That night, Evelyn returned to the service gate, but did not enter. She stood across the street beneath a closed umbrella and watched the museum's windows. The East Gallery was dark. The conservation room below it glowed faintly through a basement slit. At 9:17, Julian's car left.
Together, we represent the future of this institution. Our commitment to excellence remains unwavering.
Expect nothing less than absolute success.
The staff parking lot. At 9:22, another car arrived and stopped beside the loading dock. A man in a gray coat carried a flat black case through the service door. Evelyn wrote down the license plate, then crossed it out. She did not know who the man
Together, we form the complete picture.
A synergy of service and sophistication. Ready to lead the way.
was. She knew only that he had not used the public entrance. The next morning, Malcolm called her from a number she did not recognize. I am sorry, he said. Where are you? At the river. Stay there for 20 minutes. Evelyn heard a second voice in the background, then the click of a door. Malcolm joined her on a bench beneath the railway bridge. He looked older than he had the day before. Julian has moved the gala forward, he said. The board will announce that the portrait was transferred to a private storage facility for safety. Evelyn stared at him. That is not true. No, then why would they say it? Malcolm looked at the...
Good morning.
So glad you could join us.
water. Because the painting was never insured for what they are claiming. He told her the Blue Hour had been appraised twice in the last year. The first appraisal valued it at $3 million. The second, commissioned by a company called Vale Heritage Holdings, valued it at $11 million. The difference was the foundation's collateral. Julian had borrowed against a higher figure to finance a new museum wing. If the painting disappeared before the loan was examined, the loss could be converted into an insurance claim. Evelyn asked why Malcolm had not stopped it. I did not know the second appraisal existed until last night.
This drawing, it shows a door behind the shelves. Impossible. There is no other room. Look closely.
Wait, don't touch that.
He said. When I asked for the file, it had been removed from the archive. Evelyn reached in her jacket and took out the gray glove. This is not from the person who took the painting, she said. It is from the person who prepared the frame. Malcolm looked at the bag.
Look closer. Do you see the yellow line behind the vent?
But did not touch it. What do you mean? The back of the frame was too clean. The empty hook was warm. The portrait was not hurried out. It was removed after the gallery lights turned on, while someone had time to close the backing screws and wipe the wall. Malcolm's eyes lifted. You saw that. I listened to the wall. They went to Tessa's apartment that afternoon because the museum was watching its own archive. Tessa brought a laptop, 2 photocopied inventory sheets, and a box of rice crackers. She had found an old accession card for the Blue Hour in a retired catalog. The card listed the portrait's original dimensions.
I found it.
It's exactly as you described. Let's proceed with caution.
As 36 by 24 inches. The current frame was 35.5 by 23.75. That is not a restoration difference, Tessa said. That is a replacement frame. Evelyn remembered the warm hook. The empty frame may not belong to the painting. Tessa searched the archive database. The current frame had been logged as a gift from a private collector 6 months earlier. The donor field was blank. The approval signature belonged to Julian. Evelyn asked whether the museum had taken a photograph of the frame before installation. Tessa found one. In the photograph, a small maker's mark appeared in the lower right corner, an oval with the letters H and M. She enlarged it. The mark matched a frame manufacturer who had closed in 1948. If this is a replacement,
We cannot accept these terms.
You have no choice.
We will find another way.
Tessa said, it is older than the building. At 4:10, Julian called Evelyn and offered her severance. 2 months' pay. A letter saying her position had been eliminated during a security review. No admission of wrongdoing. No reference to the missing painting. Evelyn asked why he was offering severance before the investigation ended. He said, because I understand how frightening uncertainty can be. She said, you are not offering certainty. You are offering silence. He lowered his voice. You have a family member who depends on you. Evelyn felt the threat land softly, exactly where he intended. Noah's school fees, her mother's rent, the repairs needed on their apartment's old stairwell. She did not.
You knew about this.
Of course we did.
This was my family's. Why didn't you tell me?
Accept. Instead, she called Amara Bell, an attorney who represented museum workers and small cultural organizations. Amara met them in a diner with red booths and a view of the courthouse. She listened without interrupting. When Evelyn finished, Amara asked one question. What do you have that existed before the accusation? Evelyn opened her notebook. Tessa placed the copied accession card beside it. Noah put his sketchbook on the table. Amara looked at the drawing of the vent. Your nephew saw a light behind the wall? He saw a line of yellow, Evelyn said, and he drew it before the painting disappeared. Amara
I found it.
Oh, Malcolm.
nodded. Then we do not begin with what you believe. We begin with what can be dated. Amara filed a preservation request before the museum could alter the East Gallery, the conservation room, or its access logs. The court clerk stamped it at 8:03 the next morning. A forensic preservation team arrived at noon. Julian met them at the front entrance with 2 board members and a statement about protecting the museum from sensational claims. Amara answered by showing the stamped order. The team entered the East Gallery. Evelyn stayed outside the tape. She watched the technicians photograph the wall.
Mr. Sterling is ready to see you. Yes. Come in, Blackwood.
We have a problem, Sterling.
Floor, the vent, the hooks, and the screw holes. One technician found a narrow blue fiber caught in the lowest hook. It matched the lining of the original portrait frame listed on the accession card, not the black replacement frame left on the wall. The finding changed the case. The portrait had not been removed from the frame. The portrait and its original frame had been removed together, and the black frame had been installed afterward. Someone had staged an empty wall. Malcolm came to the gallery and stared at the new photographs. The original frame had a concealed repair, he said. A split in the lower rail. I was the only curator who knew. Evelyn looked at him. Who else knew the repair? Malcolm closed his hand around the brass loop in his pocket. Julian, he signed the conservation report. That evening, Tessa found a second discrepancy.
I know what you're capable of,
Yeah,
and I know what you're afraid of.
we'll see.
A camera in the East Gallery had stopped recording from 5:41 to 6:26 on the morning of the disappearance. The system marked the gap as a network fault. But the camera in the corridor outside the gallery had recorded a technician carrying a coil of cable at 5:36. The technician's uniform belonged to the museum's contracted security vendor. The vendor's
The thief used a left-handed glove. Why would they leave this behind?
invoice listed no visit that day. Julian said the technician had been repairing a flood sensor. The invoice said otherwise. There was a second location code. Conservation Room B. Evelyn remembered the faint smell beneath the empty
I represent the board, and together we are committed to this venture.
Yeah.
And I am here to ensure its success.
We are aligned.
frame. Shellac, rainwater, and something sweet like orange peel. Conservation rooms use shellac. The basement loading area smelled of rainwater. The orange peel came from Malcolm's tea, not Julian's office.
The log is clear. Julian, he did this.
How could he? This is the moment.
He asked Malcolm where he had been at 5:30. He said he had arrived at 6:50. Tessa checked the staff entrance camera. Malcolm had not entered, but a paper cup from the museum cafe, bearing the curator's usual order, had been found in the conservation sink. The cup was dated 5:32. The board called an emergency meeting without Evelyn. Amara insisted she attend. The room had glass walls, a long walnut table, and a screen displaying the museum's new
Something's wrong.
Look at the second entry.
Notice something interesting?
foundation logo. Julian sat at the head. Malcolm sat to his right. Amara placed the preservation order in front of the chairperson. Tessa set down the accession card. Evelyn placed the gray glove beside it. Julian said,
Threat level is critical.
We need to isolate it now.
I'm initiating the lockdown sequence.
"This is not a courtroom," Amara said, then stopped presenting conclusions as if they are evidence. Julian showed the board the access log with Evelyn's card number. He said the museum had a serious security failure and that the public deserved a clear explanation. Evelyn asked to see the original log, not the printed summary. The security chief hesitated. The board chair told him to provide it. The raw file showed 2 entries at 5:58, Evelyn's card at the service gate, and a maintenance override at the conservation corridor. The override was not linked to a person. Julian
I have something to discuss with you.
This is unexpected. Not for long.
said the override was probably automated. Tessa leaned forward. Automated overrides are logged with the system name. This one was entered manually. Julian turned toward her. "You work for the archive, not security." "I work with records," Tessa said. "This is a record." The chair asked who could issue a manual override. The security chief named 4 people. Evelyn was not one of them. Malcolm was not one of them. Julian was. The room went still. Julian said he had used the override weeks earlier during a plumbing inspection. Tessa displayed the timestamp. The override happened on the morning the blue hour disappeared. The board did not remove Julian. They asked for another meeting. That night, Malcolm came to Evelyn's apartment with the brass loop in his hand. "I should have told you about the original frame," he said. The frame was not just damaged. It contained a folded letter from Clara Vale. Evelyn opened the door wider. A letter. Clara wrote that the Blue Hour was based on a photograph of a woman named Ruth Carter. Ruth worked in the Vale family's house. She was never credited. Evelyn felt the air leave the room. "Carter?" Malcolm nodded. "Your mother's family name?" Evelyn had heard the name Ruth Carter only once, in a box of papers her mother kept beneath a sewing machine. Her mother had said Ruth was a great-grandmother who cleaned houses and painted in secret. There was no portrait, no record, no reason to believe the story was more than a family fragment. Malcolm opened the loop. Inside its case was a small photograph. A young black woman stood beside a window, wearing a dark blue dress. The face was turned slightly away. The background was the same tall window Clara Vale had painted in the Blue Hour. The letter had been discovered during a frame repair 22 years earlier. Malcolm had sealed it in an archival envelope and noted its existence in a restricted conservation report. Julian had seen the report. If the letter proved that Clara had used Ruth's likeness without credit, the museum's founding story would change. It would also strengthen a claim from Ruth's descendants to recognition, compensation, and control.
Almost there.
You got it. Let's move.
Over reproductions. Evelyn asked why Julian would steal the portrait instead of releasing the letter. Malcolm answered, "Because a scandal can be managed. A living family with a documented claim cannot." Amara asked Malcolm whether he had the letter. He said no. 3 months earlier, Julian had requested it for a private donor preview. After that, the envelope vanished. Evelyn asked whether the portrait had been taken to hide the letter. Malcolm shook his head. The letter was in the frame. If the frame disappeared with the painting, the evidence disappeared too. Tessa traced the black frame's maker's mark to a restoration supplier in a town 2 hours north. The supplier's invoice showed a rush order placed by...
Look, a thread. It might be what we need. Then let's find the source.
The tracks lead to the river.
Vale Heritage Holdings. 1 black frame, 1 custom-sized backing board, 1 set of brass hanging hooks. The delivery date was 2 days before the gala. The frame had been paid for by the foundation, not the museum. Amara called the supplier. The owner remembered the order because Julian had insisted on collecting it himself. He also remembered Julian asking whether the original frame could be destroyed. The supplier had kept a carbon copy of the receipt. Amara secured it. It listed the dimensions of the replacement frame and a handwritten note. "Leave old hardware in place." Evelyn read the line twice. "That explains the warm hook," she said. The hook was never part of the replacement. It was the original anchor.
The grand estate.
It's exactly as the old man drew it.
And the west wing is the key.
Heated by the lights after the painting was removed. The evidence now formed a line. Julian ordered a false frame. A security contractor disabled the camera and entered the conservation corridor. The original frame and the portrait were taken together. The empty frame was staged on the wall. Evelyn's card was used to create a simple story about access. The missing letter gave the motive. But the board still had not seen the painting, and without the painting, Julian could call every document incomplete. Noah solved the next part by accident. He was drawing the museum's basement from the public floor plan when he noticed the east stairwell ended 1 level above the loading dock. "There's a room missing," he said. Evelyn looked at the plan. The building had been expanded in 1978. The basement map showed a storage corridor, a boiler room, and a sealed service lift. The lift did not appear on the current plan. Tessa searched old fire inspection records. The service lift had been closed after a flood, but shafts still connected the conservation room to the loading dock. Amara requested the original building plans. The museum's facilities office said they had been lost. Evelyn knew they had not. She had cleaned the old plan cabinet herself. It was behind a false panel in the maintenance workshop, a place no visitor would ever see. Inside, the 1978 plans were rolled in brown paper. The service lift was marked in red ink.
Time is running out.
We have everything under control.
Beside it, someone had written, "Not for public circulation." The handwriting was not Julian's. It belonged to Clara Vale's last architect. The preservation team searched the lift shaft. They found fresh scrape marks along the metal rail and a thread of blue fabric caught on a bolt. At the bottom of the shaft, beneath a sheet of plastic, they found a wooden crate with the museum's old shipping code. It was empty except for a square of torn lining and a brass hook. The crate had been moved recently. A wheel track led from the lift to the loading dock. The security vendor's dispatch records showed a truck leaving at 6:18 on the morning of the disappearance. The destination was not the insurer's storage facility. It was Vale Heritage Holdings, an address registered to Julian. The board chair finally asked Julian where the Blue Hour was. Julian said he did not know. Amara placed the dispatch record on the table. Julian said the address was a family office used for confidential materials. The chair asked whether the painting was there. Julian said, "You are asking me to answer a question based on an unverified accusation." Evelyn looked at him. "No, we're asking you to answer a question based on your own override, your own frame order, your own truck, and your own foundation." Julian's composure cracked for the first time. He said the museum had been built by people who understood that survival required control. He said donors did not fund uncertainty.
The portrait is here, but the letter isn't.
Are you certain it's not hidden? We need to find that letter now.
He said a family dispute over a portrait could destroy a century of public trust. Evelyn answered, "You did not protect the museum. You protected the version of it that keeps you in charge." The board voted to suspend Julian's authority, but he had already moved the painting. A court order allowed investigators to search Vale Heritage Holdings. The building was a narrow brick office beside the river, with a private archive in the basement. The portrait was not there. Neither was the letter. But behind a locked cabinet, investigators found the original frame wrapped in brown paper. The concealed repair was visible. Malcolm's initials were written on the backing board. In the corner, a small envelope-shaped shadow showed.
The Blue Hour. It's real. I don't believe it. It's been here all along.
Where Clara's letter had once rested. On the same day, a freight broker called Amara. He had seen news of the investigation and recognized a shipping photograph. 2 nights earlier, a crate with a black foundation seal had been loaded onto a private ferry headed upriver. The broker had taken a photograph because the crate's label was wrong. It listed the object as a...
I don't understand.
He knows.
You can't prove anything.
damaged reproduction, not a museum portrait. The ferry was scheduled to stop at an old textile mill owned by Vale Heritage Holdings. Evelyn, Malcolm, Tessa, and Amara reached the mill before sunset. They did not break in. They waited for the court officer and the state cultural property investigator. The mill smelled of wet brick, rust.
I told you she'd come.
Now what?
We wait.
And river mud. Inside, they found a temporary exhibition space being prepared for Julian's private foundation. The blue hour stood against a wall beneath a white cloth. Its original frame was still attached. The painting was unharmed, but the bottom rail had been opened. The letter was gone. Julian arrived while the investigators were photographing the room. He had no lawyer with him. He looked at Malcolm, not Evelyn. "You knew what this would do," he said. Malcolm's voice was quiet. "I knew what hiding it would do." Julian said the museum could not survive a public claim that its founding artist had borrowed a working woman's face. He said the board would close the East Gallery. He said donors would leave. He said the painting would become a symbol of theft.
I have made my decision.
Yes, Mr. Crawford?
Instead of beauty. Evelyn stepped closer to the covered portrait. "It was already a symbol of theft," she said. "You just wanted to choose who was allowed to name it." The letter was found inside a hollow section of the replacement frame at the museum. Julian had hidden it there before the original frame was moved. He had planned to remove it after the gala and destroy it. The envelope was damp but readable. Clara Vale had written that Ruth Carter had sat for 3 afternoons beside the north window, wearing a blue dress borrowed from the household. Clara promised to name her if the painting was ever displayed. She never did. At the bottom, in a different hand, Ruth had added one sentence. If they keep the picture, let them keep the truth with
Welcome. I'm honored to introduce my colleagues.
And I'm pleased to be here.
Let's begin.
it. The board wanted a private settlement. Amara refused to let Evelyn's family be turned into a confidentiality clause. The museum's insurer wanted the incident described as an unauthorized transfer. Tessa wanted the archive opened. Malcolm wanted the founding gallery rewritten. Evelyn wanted Ruth's name placed beside the portrait, not beneath it.
I made my decision.
You'll regret this. Not as much as you will.
The public hearing was held in the museum's largest gallery 3 weeks later. The blue hour hung behind protective glass. The original frame had been repaired, but left visible. The gray glove sat in a small evidence case. Julian did not attend. He had resigned and faced charges related to fraud, evidence tampering, and breach of fiduciary duty.
The competition begins now.
We're ready, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely.
Contractor's license was suspended. The board announced a restitution fund, an independent provenance review, and a staff-elected oversight committee. They also offered Evelyn her job back with a new title and a higher salary. She accepted only after the contract gave maintenance staff access to safety logs and a protected channel for reporting concerns. Malcolm spoke first at the hearing. He said museums often claim to preserve memory while choosing which people are allowed to enter it. He said Clara Vale's skill was real, but skill did not erase the debt she owed Ruth Carter. Then he stepped aside. Evelyn stood beneath the portrait. She wore her slate blue jacket and carried the red notebook. Her hand shook once, then
Congratulations, Ruth.
No.
No. The honor is hers. It belongs to her now.
stopped. She told the audience that she was not an art historian and did not know how to explain every brushstroke. She knew how to notice a loose screw, a false frame, a camera gap, a smell that did not belong, and a warm hook on a cold morning. She said evidence was not always dramatic. Sometimes it was a thread in a seam. Sometimes it was a child's drawing. Sometimes it was a line in a notebook written before anyone knew it would matter. Tessa displayed the original accession card. Amara read the sentence from Ruth's note. Noah stood near the back with his blue sketchbook open to the drawing of the vent. Malcolm placed the brass loop beside the evidence case. When the gallery lights came on, the blue dress in the portrait seemed to deepen. Visitors moved closer. Nobody rushed them away. 6 months later, the museum opened a new gallery called The People in the Frame. The first label beside the blue hour read, Ruth Carter, whose likeness and labor were central to this work. Evelyn served on the oversight committee and still worked one maintenance shift each week. She kept the red notebook, though its pages now had an official seal. Tessa built a public archive from the records the museum had once kept hidden. Amara helped the Carter family negotiate reproduction rights. Malcolm retired from the board and began teaching free evening classes in the workshop. Noah's drawing of the East Gallery hung in the staff corridor.
The lost heir. We found her.
He had added a yellow line behind the vent and a small figure holding a flashlight. Evelyn asked him what the figure was looking for. A place where the wall tells the truth, he said. She smiled and pinned the drawing beside the maintenance schedule. On the morning of the new gallery's opening, Evelyn walked through the East Room before the visitors arrived. The marble was clean. The air was cool. The frame rested evenly against the wall. She placed her palm near the lower rail without touching the glass. The painting looked back with the same patient expression, but it no longer seemed to be waiting for permission. In the corner, a small brass plaque carried Ruth Carter's name in clear letters. Malcolm stood beside her. "Do you still listen to walls?" he asked. Evelyn looked at the portrait, then at the people gathering beyond the doors. Only when the room is trying to hide something. He nodded. The first visitors entered. A child pointed toward the blue dress. A guide began to tell the story. And for once, the story did not begin with the person who owned the museum. It began with the person whose hands had been left out of the frame.